Hello folks, and welcome to the channel. Welcome back, and in this video we're going to continue to work on the Z3 and more specifically the rear suspension and the drive system. Hey guys, I just got back picking up this part for the Z3, but let me drop it off because this is pretty heavy. You just saw me dragging in the differential, and this is the one that has been rebuilt. It is now a Torsen 25% limited slip differential. And here we have a newly fitted bushing, and that's the one that typically wears out and then can cause a lot of clunking. I went for the standard bushing and not for a race type, which is typically harder, just because of MOT reasons, because you can't get it past MOT with modified bushes. Strange, but that's the way it is. But as you can see, this is now pretty solid and you don't have any play anymore. So this is really good. This has been very well rebuilt. One of the things with these diffs is that you have to change the oil after about 25,000 kilometers the first time, and in fact they even put a tag up for that, which is really nice. I have a new speed sensor on it, so all by all this is looking real nice and real good. We also included an improvement by having studs instead of bolts. It is not my habit to make a commercial for a specific brand or company that does diff rebuilds or anything else for that matter. But if I get a good service, I don't mind to mention it. And in fact, lots of you have been asking me, where did I got it rebuilt? So I got it rebuilt at Hardeman Motorsport, which is a company in the Netherlands. And as you can see, this is still a 3.15 ratio diff. And it is a Torsen, so it's a limited slip differential at 25%. But we're not going to install the differential in this video. We still have work to be done on the rear axle and on the rear suspension arms. And in fact, we're going to rebuild the complete rear axle and the rear suspension arms, including new prop shafts. So I've taken off on the right hand side the rear suspension arm of the main axle, and the reason for that is that I have several issues on the main axle but also on the rear suspension arms. You can see that we have slight corrosion or slight rust on the rear axle, and it's not too bad yet, but I want to prevent more rust on this because I want to preserve this car. We also have rust further down here, and that was one of the remarks I had on the MOT. So let me zoom into this area where normally the diff is fitted. I mean, the rust or the oxidation is not severe, but it's enough to start working on it. This area is part of the rear axle where we actually have the differential fitted, and you can see the rust over here. It's peeling off a little bit, but again, it's not severe enough. So I'm going to take out this rear axle and blast it, and then we're going to repaint it so it's back in its original state. But that's not the only issue with the rear axle. We have some more issues why we need to take it off. So this is where the rear axle mounts to the body of the car, and there are bushes in here, and they are a bit worn out on this car. And in fact, I had a remark from the MOT to pay close attention to that. Not that they were bad, but it was time to pay attention to it. So we'll have to remove this bolt. I also have to remove this bracket here, and then we can actually lower down the complete axle. And you can see some other areas where the plastic kind of pastry they put up has come loose and water gets in, and then you get rust. So we'll clean up that whole rust area as well to make sure everything is nice and tidy again. Some people will remove the inner liner here. I don't think that's necessary in my case. You don't need to do that, but some people do. And this is the left hand side of the car where we still have everything connected. We got the shock, we got the half shaft, we've got the suspension arm still bolted down to the rear axle. So this is what we're going to disconnect in this video. It's the same on the other side, so hopefully that will give you an idea on how much work that is to do it. And we also have another reason why we want to take the rear suspension arms out. Let me show you on a close-up what I mean with that. So that's the suspension arm we took out on the right hand side, and you can see the overall state. It's not too bad, it's not bent, but it has a lot of rust areas. I mean, this is all surface rust, this is just a piece of metal, doesn't really matter here. But there are areas that are far more important. For instance, where the bushes are, and look how that is corroded. And let us zoom in that area so you will understand why I want to take this apart. This is where the rear suspension arm is connected to the rear axle on the Z3. And you can see how corroded this is. And that's why I wanted to take this out, blast it, and see how bad it is and see if we can still use it or not. But I think it's just some surface rust, so we should be quite alright, I guess. At the same time, we might want to change out these bushes. Although they still feel alright, but while you're at it, well, why not changing it at the same time? Well, we'll see after we shot blasted it what the situation is. So, we're going to start first of all by putting the car on a stand. Then we remove the rear wheel, and then we will remove the drive shaft or the prop shafts. And of course, in my case, I already have it disconnected from the differential. In your case, that might be different. Once you've done that, then it's time to remove actually the brake lines. And that's going to leak some fluid, so I made a special stop to block that. We disconnect the brake line at the back of the protection plate on the brake system itself on the wheel. We then remove the brake caliper. We block the brake pipe. We put it on the side by removing it from the clips and some other little supports. Once that is done, we actually remove we make sure the drive shaft is removed, and then we can take off the disc or disc drum, because it's a combination of a disc, a brake disc, and a drum. You might have to fiddle a bit with the manual brake shoes by adjusting them, but making them a bit more loose. So don't keep your manual brake pulled up, because that's not going to work too well. And then you can take that disc off. Once the disc is off, then that's cleared off. We're going to remove the ABS sensor. And then finally, we'll remove the shock absorber. We'll also remove then the bolts on the supporting arm, and then we will be able to lift it from underneath. And that should be that first part, which is then done. And then we can work on it. So you'll see all this in great detail in the next coming minutes or so. So with any further ado, let's get on to it. So we're going to start with taking off the wheels, and I need this special adapter here for the safety bolt or the security bolt, because otherwise people could steal the rims. So if you lose that one, then you have a bit of a problem. The next thing we're going to do is to remove the bolt which is holding the drive shaft onto the wheel hub. Now I have supported the drive shaft in the back, or the prop shaft, and for that you're going to need a socket 30, and then we'll use the impact wrench and just get it off. So let's see if that goes. There we go, and that's loose. Almost. And that's it, and there's a washer that comes with it, so keep that together. The next thing is now to knock back the prop shaft, and for that I'm using a bar with a small tip on it, and you can see there's a small kind of indent on this axle anyway. So then just place it on there, and then I'm going to use a big hammer to knock it a bit backward. And that's moving nicely. If you're going to take out the prop shaft, I typically support it with some tie wrap so it can't bend down and it cannot fall down. It's also not good to jerk it out like this, because then you're going to take apart the gaiters most likely, or the joints, so the CV joints that is. So it's better to keep knocking it out gently until it's fully out, and then you can just remove it. And I can feel that is out now. And now all I need to do is cut it. And we can actually take it out. The splines still look in a pretty good condition, and the little holes that you see here, this is your ABS ring. There's a sensor pointing on it, and each time the wheel is spinning, it will create a pulse, because you have an opening and a metal bar, an opening and a metal bar, and this is how you detect if the wheel is blocked or not. So that's important for your ABS pump. But overall, this prop shaft on this side looks quite alright, a lot better than the other side. So inspect your gators that there are no cracks on them, that's important. But also you can do a quick check by holding one side, holding the other side, and then try to rotate them left, right, while holding the other side. And you should feel no play. And this one feels quite alright actually. So this prop shaft is still a usable prop shaft. The gators are still good, so I have no issue with that. Nevertheless, I have two new ones, so we'll fit the new ones, but I might keep this one as a spare, you never know. The next thing we're going to do is to disconnect the brake line from the brake caliper, and therefore I will have to stop the dripping out of brake fluid from the brake pipe. And I made a little plastic tube with a bolt on the back to stop it. And this tube is just about the right size to slide over the brake line once it's disconnected, and I then can tie it up, and then that way I'm not going to lose too much brake fluid. I will still lose some, but not a lot. So this is the brake line, and that's the one we need to disconnect from the brake caliper. And we have to unlock the nut in the back. And before doing so, we will clean it up a little bit, so because we don't want to have any debris in it. All right, it was a bit tough to get it open, but now it's open. Nothing goes easy. So now I'm going to put this plastic tube up here, as I said, because we already see some brake fluid coming out. All right. I think this is good. So now we can remove the brake caliper. Now, removing the brake caliper is very easy. I just need to undo this bolt, and then I can take it off. So now we're going to take off the disc. This is the disc and the drum, because the drum and the disc are one part, and this is the drum part, and inside you find the manual brake shoes. And to do so, we need to undo first of all this little bolt here, and once that is out, we should be able to lift it off, but it might be that the internal brake shoes are too tight, or they are really pushing against the drum, so we may have to go through one of these little holes and twiggle a bit inside that tooth wheel inside to release these brakes. And that can be sometimes a little bit of an annoyance to undo these. But on this one, it works very smoothly. I've known it different. So let's see if we can take it off. You can feel the resistance of the brakes at the inside, so now I need to move that around a bit so I can actually loosen up the brakes inside. And for that, it's a little bit of fiddling. I can't show it to you, but what you need to do is to light inside, look through one of the holes, and then with a screwdriver toggle that tooth wheel which is at the inside. It's already a bit more loose, so maybe I can get it out. There we go. So the next thing we need to do is to remove the manual brake shoes, and there's more fun things than working on brakes, but it's not that hard. I'm going to release the tension a bit, then I'm going to try to release this spring here, and then I release also these springs by turning them like half a turn, because they have a locking pin in the back, and then we'll try to get them off. So let's see how we go about this. Whoop, that's the wrong direction. The more pressure we can take off, the better. Eh? Come on, it's near to the end. By the way, this is also the tooth wheel where you need to adjust the brakes when you put it all back together. This spring is pushing on it. All right, that's loose. As you have seen, removing these locking pins isn't very hard. And here you can actually see the lock. So now the shoes are pretty loose, so now we can take them out. Let's try to remove this thing here. There we go. Brakes are not a lot of fun to work on, honestly. I never liked to work on manual brakes. So with that removed, now things should go a little bit smoother, at least on the bottom. So I need to force it out. All right. Here we go. So now we're going to try to release the manual brake. And there's a lever mechanism here. You see that? We can fold that open, and then all you need to do is inside here, there's this little pin. You can just push that out. And this is this little pin that I just dropped, and now you can just remove this whole thing. So now we can remove the manual brake, and I will have to knock that out gently on the sides, and you'll see what I mean by that. So this is the manual cable that is normally fitted inside the wheel hub, and this is the part that we need to knock out. Now don't knock on the nylon here, but knock on this edge. So you need a very small little punch to punch that out, because you can't really pull it out. And that's the kind of punch that I'm using. So and you need to kind of feel it if you're on the metal. All right, so that's almost out. Let's see if we can get it from the inside. And there we go. Now we can pull it out. And did I damage it? No, we didn't. Good. The next thing we're going to do is to remove this nut, so I can actually flip up this flexible together with this brake pipe, which is going to the caliper. And we can lift it from these plastic knobs here. Typically they break, so that's something to keep in mind. But let's give it a try. All right, now with that removed. By the way, these are the brackets that are holding the brake pipe on the rear trailing arm of the suspension. And they typically break off. There's a very small chance you can get them loose without breaking, especially if everything is rusted up. So next is removing the ABS sensor, which is this part right here. That's just held in place with one bolt. And the part that sticks out here, this is the part that picks up the gaps that I've showed you before on the prop shaft. So let's undo this guy. Sometimes things are not always that easy, so I decided to disconnect the ABS sensor here instead of on the actual wheel hub, and we'll take it out later. So let's clip that out. So that's disconnected, so we should be good. It's all loose. The next thing we're going to do is to remove the torsion bar from the rear suspension. The next step is to remove the shock absorber. And just maybe we can lower it low enough to take the springs out, but I'm not too sure. Let's see. There we go. Let's see. And it's going to come off. So we're now down to the last two bolts. There's one bolt here, and there's another bolt on the other side, and those are the two that we need to undo. And then actually the whole side comes off. All right, so that should be loose. An impact wrench is great if you can get to it, but in these places, it's the good old-fashioned way. All right, so that's out. And in fact, I should now be able to remove the complete arm from underneath the car because it is completely disconnected. And do one bolt up. I'm extracting now the second bolt. And now that is loose, so I should be able to get it from underneath. No, it's not that heavy, so I don't think I need this lift here. Let's see. And here it is. Come on. There we go. So removing that rear part takes about, I would say, an hour and a half. If you don't tape it, of course, because when you tape it, it takes a lot longer. So now we're going to remove the rear axle, and that's 4 bolts on the side, 2 on each side, and then we have 2 more big nuts, and then we should be able to lift it from underneath the car. But that could give us a lot of other grief because these bolts on the side here, they don't look too good. Well, we're going to start by removing the bolts here on the side that are holding this bracket, and then we undo this big nut here. Now these are a pain in the butt to get at in my case because the gas tank is over here. There's not enough space, so an impact screwdriver won't work, and they are really tough cookies. By the way, in mine were very hard to see what kind of a socket or inbus I needed, but this is a 6mm one. So let's see if we can get this out. And you can see my wrench is only halfway in, but it's coming out. The other side I have used my impact wrench, and that was a lot easier. All right. Okay, that's one. So now I will do the second one, and then we'll remove the bolt. And you can see what state of the bolt is. It's so rusty, so we need to really knock the socket in with a hammer sometimes, just to make sure it fits properly. Oh wow. I need to clean that up a bit first. That is so bad, this bolt, that I cannot get my inbus in. So I will have to scrape off some rust first so that it fits, because the last thing you want is that these bolts are stuck and you have to drill them out. That would be awful. Well, it fits a little bit. So now let's see if we can knock that in a bit. Yeah, it came loose. Sorry guys that my hand was in the way, but that was a tough one to get undone. There we go. So sometimes things are not always that easy as it seems on video. And now it's time for this big bolt, and hopefully that comes loose. So now I'm going to do the other side, and then we can lower the whole thing. So I think now we should be able to lower the whole thing. There you go. But I will have to undo my drive shaft that I tied up before. Let's cut it. Okay, okay. So let's lower it a bit more. And here it is. So I can lower it some more. All right. Everything is disconnected. And now I can just take it from underneath. So we removed the rear suspension, and also we removed the rear axle, and not really much special, is it? In fact, it's pretty light material. And the reason that I had to remove it was that because the MOT had an observation about the rust that we have on this. Now all this is really surface rust. So now I'm going to shot blast it, paint it in epoxy, and then paint it in black paint. And I'm going to do the same with the suspension arms, so it all looks quite new. But we'll also replace the bushes here. Now the bushes, they still look fairly intact. I expected them to be worse, but they still look not too bad. Let me give you a close-up. So these are the bushes, and if I look at them, well, they don't look too bad. Although maybe they are ripped a bit here and there. Oh yes, I can see the cracks. See that crack here? There's a big crack there. So they are kind of worn. So we need to replace those. And I do have some pretty neat replacements for them. They are the original brand. So the first thing we're going to do is to warm up this middle part so we can actually get this piece of aluminum out. And this is the piece that comes out at the end. That's going to take a while, guys, before that's warmed up, but just give it time, okay? And I'm not forcing too much heat on it. I'm just going to give it time to let it all happen, because I don't want to make the metal soft where the bush is sitting in. I think it's now warmed up enough, and I'm sure we can almost push out that middle ring. So let's see if that is doable or not. This is just a piece of wood. Let's see if we can push it out, see how that comes out. And it falls out in the bottom. And now just let the middle part gently cook out. So it's going to burn the rubber, and it's going to heat up the sides a bit. Not too much, but enough so we can actually push it out with a tube. And then I'm going to use a big old tube to knock it out when everything is warmed up. There we go. And here it is. And this is what I found the best method to get them out. So don't overheat the metal part. You don't want this to become red. But heat up the middle part first. That goes in there like this. And then you can knock that out. And then start heating up the inside of the tube or the old bushing. And then it's going to start melting the rubber, and it's going to start burning. And while it burns, it's going to heat up this outside a bit. And then at the end, all what you need to do, when it's been running for a while, use a big pipe that fits about, and then knock that through. And then you don't have any debris on the inside. You did not damage the metal part, and you didn't have to use excessive force. So we finished blasting the rear axle. I still need to blast the suspension arms, but that's something for tomorrow. So this is the end of this video, and in the next video we're going to paint this in epoxy, then black shiny paint, and then we'll fit all the bushes also on the suspension arms, and then we start cleaning up all the other stuff, and maybe we do some anti-rust on the bottom of the car, because there are quite some areas where I have some rust, because they are using this kind of rubbery thing gummy thing, and then they do it on seams, and then over time, that comes loose and water gets in between and it's trapped, and very bad practice. I never know why they wanted to use stuff like that. Nevertheless, that's all for the next video, and I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did, although some parts I didn't really enjoy too much because it was a little bit of hard work sometimes. But anyway, I'll see you in my next video, and please don't hesitate to comment. Oh, and one more thing. The way I remove parts, well, that's the way I do it. There's a zillion ways of doing it. Everybody has his own way, and this was my way. And I don't think there is a good way. There's only different ways. Bye-bye.